Prince Philip, the husband of reigning British monarch Queen Elizabeth II, has died. He was 99 years old. Flags at Buckingham Palace are flying at half-staff. The royal family has entered an official mourning period. Well, on their golden wedding anniversary, the Queen described the Prince as her strength and stay. Also known by his title, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip spent more than 70 years by her side. Well, the royal family issued this statement an hour or so ago, where it said it's with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen has announced the death of her beloved husband. His Royal Highness, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Well, now from Andrew Simmons, who takes a look back at the life and legacy of the Duke of Edinburgh.
He was by her side throughout the longest reign of a monarch in British history. For Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, it wasn't only a marriage, but a life of service to his wife, Queen Elizabeth II. Born into Greek and Danish royalty, Philip had a lonely childhood. He was taken under the wing of the British aristocracy. When he married the then Princess Elizabeth in 1947, he was a promising young naval officer. It was a fairy tale wedding for a country emerging from war and hardship. It all changed for the young couple when Elizabeth's father, King George VI, died at only 56 years of age. She became queen, and Philip, in the words of his private secretary, looked as if the world had fallen down on him. His naval career ended along with his independence.
Prince Philip was sort of forced into making huge sacrifices. He was very much a man's man, not someone who was going to naturally fall into the position of playing second fiddle and walking 2 paces behind his wife and calling her ma'am in public and so on.
And so began life in the Queen's shadow. Hundreds of engagements a year. He did, however, manage to find time for his own charities, helping young people and conserving wildlife.
Very energetic, a problem solver, a sort of scientific cast of mind. So those were sort of, on the positive side, the attributes that people admired. Sometimes, though, his detractors would say that, some of his forthrightness could come across as rudeness.
Philip did have a reputation for embarrassing and politically incorrect remarks, whether he was being rude about the Chinese or Indians or swearing at photographers, often a sideshow to formal occasions. Yet even though an air of racism hung over him, a staunchly royalist UK media generally forgave him.
He was certainly given a much easier ride than politicians who tend to make a racist or an offensive remark in this day and age tend to have to apologise a couple of days later because there's so much pressure on them. But I've never known Prince Philip to apologise for a remark, and I remember once he wandered over after he'd said to an Aboriginal leader, "Do you still throw spears at each other?" And I saw him do this in Australia in 2002, and the next day he came over, it made front pages all over the world. And he just wandered over and said, "The trouble with you is you've got no sense of humour, the complete absence of humour." So he wasn't going to apologise.
His retirement from public duties came in 2017 with a send-off from the Royal Marines. Whatever the faults, his 60 years of public service was admired by many people. While their marriage was said to have had its ups and downs in the couple's younger years, Prince Philip remained dedicated and supportive to the Queen. She'll receive immense sympathy from a British public known to view her with respect and affection.
Well, let's cross live now to Rory Challands, who joins us from London. Rory, many people paying tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh, and they're emphasising his long and loyal service to Queen and country at this time.
Yeah, I mean, marrying the Queen in 1947, that's a long, long time ago. He lived a great many years, and a lot of those years were put in to service as one of the pillars of the royal family, one of the most important institutions of the United Kingdom, and of course the Commonwealth around the world. As to whether the UK is going to be united in its attitudes to Prince Philip, well, of course it isn't. This is a country which has, Republican leanings from certain sections of the population. I think many young people, the left-wing press, will perhaps think that his passing needs no more or less mourning than the death of any 99-year-old man. But certainly in the right-wing press, perhaps more conservative, older Britons, they will be, I think, treating him with a lot more reverence, going into his various qualities and mourning him over the coming days and weeks. And of course, we will hear the kind of things that, the kind of things from the British government that we have just heard from Boris Johnson, and we can listen to his comments now.
Prince Philip earned the affection of generations here in the United Kingdom, across the Commonwealth and around the world. He was the longest serving consort in history, one of the last surviving people in this country to have served in the Second World War, at Cape Matapan, where he was mentioned in dispatches for bravery, and in the invasion of Sicily, where he saved his ship by his quick thinking. And from that conflict, he took an ethic of service that he applied throughout the unprecedented changes of the post-war era. Like the expert carriage driver that he was, he helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remains an institution indisputably vital to the balance and happiness of our national life.
Rory, the Duke of Edinburgh was very old. He died at the age of 99, so this won't be a great shock to many people. And of course, these funerals are planned years in advance, but nobody really could have foreseen the fact that Prince Philip would have died in the middle of a global pandemic. How are they going to hold this pomp and pageantry, the royal send-off, while the country is still in lockdown?
Well, I think it will be a very different funeral than the ones that palace organisers will have been preparing for pre-COVID. Of course, since COVID hit, they have had to come up with a plan B. And what we know Plan B won't entail is the kind of things that we're used to seeing in royal funerals. So processions through the streets, crowds lining those streets, waving flags, packed in tightly next to each other. Perhaps a coffin lying in a cathedral with people processing past it and paying their respects. That is most likely going to be impossible. At the moment in the UK, because of COVID restrictions, funerals are limited to 30 people maximum. Now that is going to endure, I think, for at least a few weeks, perhaps another couple of months or so. So if we have Prince Philip's funeral within that time, it is likely to be much, much smaller and much less public than the organisers had been hoping for. So it is almost certainly going to take place at Windsor Castle and be attended by a much smaller number of people, perhaps just close family. Of course, it also raises questions about whether family overseas at the moment, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who have had their differences with the royal family, as we know, over recent months, whether they will be in attendance. These are questions we don't know the answer to yet.
OK, Rory Challands there, live from London. Rory, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's take a closer look at the life of the Duke of Edinburgh. Prince Philip was born on June 10th, 1921 in Corfu to Greek and Danish royal families. He was known as Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark. Well, due to his mother's ill health, Philip moved to England in 1928 and was raised by his maternal grandmother and uncle. In 1942, he became a sub-lieutenant in the British Royal Navy and was promoted to first lieutenant and executive officer aboard the HMS Wallace. He participated in the Allied landings in Sicily during World War II. On November 20th, 1947, he married Princess Elizabeth at Westminster Abbey, becoming the Duke of Edinburgh. Less than 5 years later, Philip's naval career ended with the death of King George VI and Elizabeth's ascension to the throne. In 1979, his uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten, was killed in an IRA bombing in Ireland. On June 10th, 2011, Philip celebrated his 90th birthday and became the oldest serving royal consort. Later in life, he suffered from various ailments, including a chest infection, a blocked coronary artery and bladder infections. And in August 2017, he attended his final official engagement before retiring from public life. Well, let's get more now from royal biographer Christopher Wilson. He joins us on Skype from Cornwood, in the United Kingdom. It's good to have you with us on the News Hour. It's hard to get the life of a 99-year-old, especially one married to the reigning British monarch, into approximately 1 minute 30 seconds. But there's a long and storied life, many achievements, many impacts on so many people. How do you think he will be remembered, not just by those in the UK, but also worldwide?
Well, I think he is a person who has actually saved the House of Windsor, in my view. The Queen, when she came to the throne, was still in her early 20s, and she needed a strong guiding hand behind her. She needed somebody who would support her and separate her from the old court, who were a load of courtiers who had been around for many, many years and didn't want anything to change. The British royal family needed to change radically in the post-war period, and it was Philip who came in with that dash and panache that he's got, that helped change things. And of course, he ruffled a lot of feathers. He made a lot of enemies doing this, but in so doing, he modernized the House of Windsor, which would otherwise have been in a very much more difficult situation. His mother-in-law, the Queen Mother, who had been Queen Elizabeth to the previous king, King George VI, was a conservative, backward-looking figure, determined that she should have control of her daughter, Queen Elizabeth, and Philip managed to brush her to one side and allow Queen Elizabeth to be her own woman, and that is really his greatest contribution.
Quite. Well, his life, and as we're hearing in tributes coming in from presidents and prime ministers around the world, his life really has been defined by service and royal duty. But he did have a very distinguished military career of his own. It must have been very difficult to set that aside for a role in which he spent most of his life walking several paces behind his wife.
It broke his heart. He thought that he had a good chance that King George VI, Queen Elizabeth's father, would live at least for another 20 years. It would give him a chance to rise up in the Royal Navy. He was an enthusiastic sailor. He was a military man. He enjoyed the challenge, the manly world that the being on a ship at sea demanded. And he was particularly good at it. He was competent at it. And to suddenly have this career ripped away from him, and then, as you say, to have to walk 2 steps behind the woman that was his wife, was very difficult. What I will say is that he was born royal, and he knew that if you became Prince Consort, that was your job, 2 steps behind.
But he fulfilled that duty. He never wavered from it, much as he would have liked or disliked it. He carried that role and function to the very end, and he was an important support for Queen Elizabeth, not just in the roles he performed, but also to help her steady the ship through what's been quite a turbulent reign, it has to be seen. The royal family has endured many challenges, not just the abdication, the death of Princess Diana, and it seems it's going through another turbulent time right now with the story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Well, he was able to discipline people. He was able to call on the Queen's authority. The Queen said, "You have to run my family for me because I'm running matters of state." And so he was able to keep a relatively strong discipline on the younger royals. I mean, things happened. Princess Diana, Prince Charles. The difficulties that they've had with virtually all the children. You can't escape that in any family. But what he was able to do was he was able to bring an order and discipline so that if something went wrong, that somehow a corrective could be made, simply because he would knock heads together. He would insist that the royal family came first, and even if you were a prince or princess, your duty was to the crown. To the Queen, if you like, but to the crown. That's your job, that's what you do. And he was a wonderful sergeant major figure in that way.
OK, royal biographer Christopher Wilson, thank you so much for shedding light and giving more context to the life of the Duke of Edinburgh, who has passed away at the age of 99. Let's move to other news now, and we're heading to Myanmar, where there are reports of tense fighting as security forces crack down